Batman The Long Halloween Part 2 is the second part of the adaptation of one of the greatest, if not the greatest comic book of all time, Batman The Long Halloween, and once again, it's directed by Chris Palmer and stars Jensen Ackles as Batman, Josh Duhammel as Harvey Dent, Billy Burke as James Gordon, and Naya Rivera as Selina Kyle. This one continues the story of the Long Halloween comic book right where the first one left off. Holiday is still on the loose and all of our lead characters are battling with their inner demons. Now, I was really excited to watch this one because I did really enjoy the first one. I thought it was a really good adaptation. It's not nearly as good as the book, but this comic book is just on a whole other level. I have a review of that one and the first one, and I really loved the comic book and I really enjoyed the first one, so I was like, they need to cap this one off really strong, and did they? Stick around to find out. I think the biggest positive with this film in particular, it worked well, like really well in the first one, but in this film is the voice acting, especially Jensen Ackles and Josh Duhammel. I apologize if I'm saying it wrong, but I think that's right. These two are just unbelievable. There's a lot of really emotional scenes, and when I talk about battling with their inner demons, it mainly focuses on these two characters and what they have to go through. Obviously, Batman or Bruce Wayne is a very traumatized person. He has a lot of trauma in his past with his parents. Anyone who's ever watched a Batman film, unless it's like only Batman and Robin or something, would know that. And I think that the way it was shown here was really important. There was a scene in particular with Selina Kyle, and it kind of happens within the first act, I think, and it is very emotional and kind of heartbreaking in a way. It involves Scarecrow as well, so if you've seen the film, you know exactly what I'm talking about, or read the comic book, but it's so emotional. And as you can tell by the poster, this one does show the downfall of Harvey Dent, and this may be my favorite version of the downfall of Harvey Dent. Like, I love The Dark Knight, it's my second favorite film of all time. I have the poster there, favorite trilogy of all time. I've said that a million times on this channel, and I love what they do with him there. I love Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent or Two-Face, but here there's just something so interesting just with the story. Again, it kind of comes down to this comic book, and I'm not going to spoil it. Like, I don't consider that a spoiler because it is obvious that Harvey does become Two-Face, and because it is on the poster, like the one poster of the movie. That's why I'm going to say it in the review. I'm not going to say how it happens, but the way it's done is just so good, and like it's really heartbreaking in a way, and I love what they do, of course, with his wife and Gilda and like just everyone. James Gordon, of course, really interesting here. He kind of takes a sidestep and it more so focuses on Harvey and Bruce with their inner demons, and then we get more of Poison Ivy here. We get less of Joker, and Troy Baker is really good doing a Mark Hamill impersonation, but we get more of Poison Ivy, and her design is really unique in the comic book, and I think that it was kind of transferred here pretty well. There's some stuff with her, and I really enjoyed most of it. I think it's actually really well done, but just like the first one, this film does suffer from some pacing issues, and I feel like they could have just taken part 1 and part 2 and put them into one movie and made it like 2.5 hours long max. Like, I know if you were to supercut these together, it would be longer than that now with the two adaptations that are released, and I'm not saying that I dislike them. Obviously, I like them both very much, but there's just so many times, it's happened in the first one too, where characters will just pause for like too long, or there'll just be like a weird gap in between dialogue, and you're just like, okay, like what's the point of this, where like a character would be thinking, but then they just don't respond or they leave, and I'm just like, that doesn't exactly make sense. And when that goes on through the whole film, if I were to do this in this video, then it would kind of get annoying, and when I was watching it, I wasn't super annoyed by it, but it was apparent, and it did make some scenes drag a little bit. And this film is longer than the first one, and you could definitely feel it. I could feel it at times, but I will say the action is bigger, I feel, and has more stakes. Like, this film definitely has more stakes, and that's just what happens when you have a part 1 versus a part 2. When you go into a part 1, you know you're not going to be fully satisfied because you still have another half to a story, and when it's a story as big as this one, I mean, this story is quite possibly the best Batman story there is. At least it's for sure one of them, and I feel like the way it was pulled off was very well done. I really enjoyed the action here, the sound design, everything really well done. Like, when the bullets are fired, everything, it's loud. When trucks fall and police cars and everything, it's loud and it's impactful, and that's what's really good about this. And across the board, the voice acting once again is very good. Rest in peace, Naya Rivera. She is really great here. She has, I think, even more time on screen here, and I thought it was really well done. Obviously, I have a little complaint with the suit and the way they changed it for this. I talked about that one in the first one, but that's not her fault. I think that she's really great, and I really like what they do with her and Bruce. Again, I won't get into it, and Alfred, of course, really great, and you know, James Gordon's always going to be great. You just kind of expect that going into the film. It definitely has its problems. It's not as good as the comic book. Like, if I had to pick between watching these two back to back or read the comic book, I would obviously pick read the comic book, Burke, but I will say this is probably the best adaptation they could do in animated form. I would like to see this actually transferred into live action one day in the future, even if that's, decades later. Like, I would still be really interested to see how that would be pulled off. I do think that this was actually a worthy adaptation. Obviously, it was never going to be as good as the graphic novel, so that is important to know going into it. But I will say, if you're a fan of Batman or the comic book in particular, or just DC in general, I do highly recommend checking this out. I've heard from a lot of people and a lot of outlets and everything that this is one of the best Batman animated movies, and I haven't seen too many. The only other one I think that I've seen is Mask of the Phantasm, and I have seen The Killing Joke, but I just don't really remember it. I will do a video on that one and the comic book soon. Those will be the next ones I'm talking about, but I'm just glad that these were good. I'm glad that I wasn't disappointed in them. Are these two films incredible? No, but are they really good? I'd say so. Batman the Long Halloween Part 2 finishes off this incredible story really well. Jensen Ackles and Josh Duhammel are outstanding here, and the tension is at an all-time high. It definitely takes its time, and that causes some pacing issues, but the emotion and stakes are high, and you can really feel it. I'm gonna give Batman the Long Halloween Part 2 a 4 out of 5. Yes, I did like this one a little bit more than the first, just I think because, the ending is satisfying in a way. There's more closure in this one than the book. Of course, there's added scenes to make it longer, and I think they worked. There weren't any big scenes in particular that I think were oh, why are they here? They didn't stand out to me to feel unnecessary. I do think it's good. It's, again, not nearly as good as the graphic novel, but even if we were to get a live action adaptation, I don't think it would even be as good as the graphic novel. That's just what I think, but I want to know what you thought. Have you seen both of them, or did you just check this one out, and have you read the graphic novel? Tell me if it's your favorite or where it ranks amongst the other ones down below. I know that's a lot. I apologize, and thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Over and out.